Today we're looking into it's not personal. Sometimes, we feel left out because it's unintentional. Oftentimes, unless we're like a movie star or something, we're not always the focus of the conversation. And so we're often just kind of part of the crowd or maybe in the background, but we can feel left out. And that feels really resonant with our childhood experiences often as well when we've had that happen. And if we didn't really feel like we belonged anywhere, then that can be a hard thing to work with because when we feel that as an adult, it feels more activating in our nervous system. But that's not really so much the issue. A lot of us can kind of quite quickly go, well, this isn't personal. It's just the way this works. I'm okay with that. But it does feel personal when somebody, even if it's a stranger, looks at us with contempt or disgust. They give us that look. They might say something or they might not. Just the energy of that was enough to make us feel like we're dismissed or we're not worthy of them. So when I was looking into this, and this is something that, we circle back to often, this taking things personally. When I was looking into it this time, I noticed that that's one of the 4 agreements from Don Miguel Ruiz, that book that was so popular and a lot of people really took it to heart and have done a lot of work with it. And don't take anything personally is the second of those 4 agreements. And then he goes on to say, nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. So I thought right here at the beginning, we could stop and pause and do a little inquiry around those sentences. So the reverse inquiry would be, so reverse inquiry meaning we say something that we would like to have true that we know might not quite be. And that helps to bring forward the unconscious thoughts around that. So the inquiry that you might use if you're doing that is, I am immune to the opinions and actions of others. And then as you're saying that to yourself, notice what is the response to that. There might be a no, that's not true. But also, where did you feel that in your body? Notice that for a moment. I'm immune to the opinions and actions of others. And that might not even be the right words. We might not want to be immune to that. Somewhere along the sociopath personality disorder comes to mind with that. But what we do want is to be less influenced. And if somebody who we don't respect and we don't respect their judgment judges us, to not take that in and to not feel bad around that, to have more stability and equanimity in our mind around that. So if we look at nothing others do is because of you, it's another statement from Miguel Ruiz's book. So what I'm wondering is, does that make sense? So that's one of the statements that really kind of made me sit back and reflect on. So when something negative happens to us, we know that the primitive brain tries to figure it out. What happened? What went wrong? How can I avoid that in the future? And then when things are happening to us, they're happening to us personally. So whether it's personal, like whether, we can look at someone who feels bad about something and then they shame other people for the same thing. So we can look at that and go, okay, I can see that that has to do with them more than me. And it happened to me. It makes it part of my personal experience. So sometimes we might look at it as, well, I don't even want to say anything about that or do anything about that because, it's my fault. I'm the one who is louder than what they would like. So therefore, it's my responsibility then to tone it down or whatever that might be. So we're always kind of looking into, are we in some kind of a fawning where it's a survival response of I need to keep this person on my side. And so that's, a pattern that we have as children. we can't afford to see that our parents are the ones that are creating this atmosphere that we live in, not us. And we can't afford to turn against them. So, is there any of that going on? Do I just feel like maybe I don't have the right to feel hurt by that because, that person doesn't even know me, or maybe they do know me, but I know that they're always a bully, or I should toughen up like so many people are told. So there's a lot that's going on here. So let's sit with that for a minute. How can I not take it personally, especially if it's directed at me? So, as someone who has a larger body, I see that in public when I go out. Sometimes people will give me a look. They don't know who I am, but they make an assumption about me based on my weight. And there could be other examples that are more true to you. But what is it that comes up for you when you sit with that? I can't take it personally. This isn't personal. This is their issue, their conditioning, their view of how the world should be, perhaps. And it really doesn't, it's not because of me. So, coming back to that statement, nothing others do is because of you. So, this is not to say that there's not a impact in our world from this kind of judging. So, the charming person that gets upgraded to first class in an airplane, or, you know, people that are larger bodied assumed to be lazy, so they don't get that job. They're not approved of in the same way. So, this has a big impact, this kind of judging that people do. But just to bring it home, agree that that's the way it is, but to bring it back home, it's directed at me. And then what's my response to that? One of the reasons this lands hard is because of our core deficiency beliefs. So if we feel like we have to be perfect, I'm not worthy, all of those core deficiency beliefs, that's a heavy load. And then we have the mean inner critic that comes along and says, "Who do you think you are? And don't be putting on airs," and all of those things, and more that our inner critic says. So, right now, just to get back into our bodies, if you've kind of gotten engaged in this, your body might have tightened up. You might have stopped breathing. And if you want, you could do the tapping on your forehead. Take your attention away from whatever it is that's kind of intense in your body and just into the sound and sensation of that. We could take some deeper breaths. We're always wanting to be stable, especially when we're doing these kinds of inquiries. So let's do this again. We'll pause for another moment and recall a time when you felt judged in public. Someone I know had a teacher at school who, every time they were kind of just laughing and having a good time in their little group, the teacher would come along and shush them. It's like, "You laugh too loud," or give you that look. So it might be something like that, or it might be about your body, your appearance. But what is something that is somewhat regular, something that maybe you feel shame or discomfort around? And as you're doing that, really stay steady. You could be holding your own hands. Keep noticing your breath. Notice if it feels personal in your body, in the sense of, are you reacting to it in your body? You hold your breath, tighten up. And then there's what's going on in your mind. So you might have some thoughts about that in your mind. Make sure that you use tapping or other tools to stay present. We're just looking to see what's our experience, what comes to mind. And then let's explore this a little bit. So, one thing that we could start with is, it happened. Whatever it was, whatever the incident was, words or a look or whatever it was, I feel judged and shamed. So that's the truth. And we could notice what that feels like in our body. We could also look around the room and establish again We're here, we're safe. No one's shaming us right now. We're doing an inquiry. And then we could look into some of the details, like, are you being objectified or stereotyped by what happened? Is it something like body size that's common conditioning? If you're that little skinny kid that was looked at as somebody, a weakling, especially if you were male gender, what is it that you're being shamed for? And how does that relate to my own core deficiency beliefs? Just that part for a minute. What am I being shamed for? Is it conditioned? Racism, sexism, commenting on women's bodies, a lot of that is conditioned into us. So it's a conditioned behavior. That makes it a little bit more clear that it's not personal to us. Especially when somebody makes a comment on our bodies, we often feel objectified, like a body part. And then, given all of that, take a look into they've got their own cultural frame, their own conditioning, their own personality, their own experience, whatever their beliefs are, and they've made this judgment. So take a look into, does that feel like a fair and true assessment? And do you accept that judgment? So it might be true that I have a larger body, and it is not true that there's a shame in that. There's culturally conditioned shame. And that's something that I can know about and not take on, or work at not taking on. So just whatever it is that you're, in particular, that you're working with. Notice how your history might have sensitized you to that. I certainly felt a lot more shame about my body in the past than I do now. Notice where you are in terms of fight, flight, or freeze. We're recalling something. Right now, we're not in that situation where we're being judged and shamed. We're recalling a time when we have been, though. So we have a reaction to that. We respond to that. So if you're feeling threatened physically or socially, that's good to notice. If you're in a fight response and the thoughts in your mind are like, whoa, or if you're in more of a flight or freeze, just notice that too. And then just keep coming back. Eyes open. Notice your body, your seat, your feet. Hold your hands. Give yourself a hug. Do all of those things that help us to remember that in this moment we're safe. We'll take a few minutes here to rest with these questions. Whatever situation came up, or maybe it's a new one you're working with, explore it through this lens, through some of those questions. And then coming out of that or setting it aside, you could always come back to that later, to put it on pause for now. And let's look at some of these, starting with it's not personal. We could relate that to what we were just working with in the inquiry. Check that out for a response. It's not personal. It happened to me. It is my experience. And it's not personal in the sense that there's something wrong with me. There isn't. So we can only, Deb Dana talked about this, we can only access self-compassion from ventral vagal, that feeling of trust and connection, and when we're not in a fight, flight, or freeze response. So if you're in a fight, flight, or freeze response, Just see if you can get more regulated even. Relax your body, take a few breaths. And when we're working with these words, again, these are what we would like to have true, but we're not working with them as an affirmation. It's more of we just say it and then notice, ooh, did I get that energy in my body? Did I start holding my breath? What happened? I'll say the sentences and you can just relax and let them drop into your mind. I don't absorb other people's judgments. I don't absorb other people's judgments. And be careful that you don't go into shaming yourself if you do. We all do to some extent. It's just we want to be less absorbent when it comes to other people's judgments. I'm strong, resilient, and on my own side. I know how to come back to connection. When I do get activated, I'm responding to something, I've got that catastrophic thinking going on. I know to recognize it and then to come back. Whether it's I hold my own hands, I call a friend, whatever it is, take a few breaths. I know how to come back into connection, which means coming back out of fight, flight, freeze. And again, we don't have to be perfect about this. Notice that you know how to do that. Sometimes it takes a little while, but that's okay. I prefer to not be judged, and I accept that what people think is not mine to control. Both of those are true. I prefer to not be judged, and I accept that what other people think is not mine to control. I don't get to control what other people think. We resonate with some of these very deeply because, in part, there are consequences to what other people think. So even though we can't control it, we're still very much affected by how other people think. Notice your body and breath. Let yourself relax. I accept that what people think is not mine to control. I'm self aware, kind, and decide for myself what is true for me. I'm self aware, kind, and decide for myself what is true for me. That's a journey that we're all somewhere on that continuum. I doubt if it's 100% true for anybody all of the time. We would have to be really focused on that if it was. Let's just let that sit there. All of these different ways to work with this feeling, this statement, it's not personal. So, this is very much in a different tone than what we were just looking at. Michael Singer, Living Untethered, he wrote a book and he has some programs on Sounds True. But The Untethered Soul was one that was out about 10, 12 years ago. So, as you're looking at this, just take that step back that we sometimes take. We're not dealing with the personal so much anymore, but we're dealing with our response to the moment. So you need to totally accept the outside world. Surrender your personal made up judgment of it. This is from Michael Singer from his book. You must let go of the part of you that thinks it has the right to like and dislike the result of billions of years of interactions. One of the chapters in his book is about evolution and the Big Bang and how all of these billions of interactions have led us to this moment in time. And he's saying we have to let go of thinking that we have the right to like and dislike that, to accept that this moment in front of you is a very holy thing. We have this wonderful opportunity to experience a moment in creation right now. And then he says, it took billions of years to get here. Be sure you don't miss it. So we work on all of these levels, the spiritual and the personal, our body and breath and the thoughts in our mind. We're being given this wonderful opportunity to experience a moment in creation.